Welcome to The Explainer. Let's jump right in. Today, we're totally geeking out over a really fascinating creative brief. We're looking at a short, highly concentrated blueprint that's designed to visually capture the incredibly subtle complexities of human relationships. We are going to break down exactly how a creator takes a few simple lines of text and translates them into a deeply resonant, ultra-realistic visual narrative.
Think about trying to capture an unspoken feeling on camera. Seriously, how do you film an invisible emotion? It's a huge challenge, right? We all know exactly what it feels like to experience a disconnect with someone, but taking that internal, messy friction and making it visible on screen is incredibly difficult. This brief attempts to tackle that exact challenge, demanding that the unseen dynamics of our interactions be made totally tangible.
All right, let's move into Section 1, Unpacking the Creative Brief, the Blueprint of Connection.
So the brief sets some really strict foundational boundaries right out of the gate. It requires the creators to contrast healthy and unhealthy communication, and they have to do it within a super tight 60-second window. Plus, it demands a vertical 9:16 format. That's a deliberate choice. It means the content is built for your phone, making these everyday, relatable situations feel incredibly intimate, placing them quite literally in the palm of your hand.
That takes us to Section 2, Faces of Miscommunication, or 3 acts of relational friction.
Let's look at the first specific scenario they outline. The brief asks for a scene showing someone looking visibly confused right after a conversation. We've all been there, right? The conversation just ended, the words are fading out, and what's left is this lingering, heavy confusion just plastered across their face. It's that jarring, sinking realization that you and the other person were having two completely different conversations.
And that's absolutely crucial, because this quiet confusion perfectly encapsulates unhealthy communication. It's what happens when wires get crossed and intended meaning is completely lost or distorted. That failure to connect just leaves people feeling isolated and trapped in their own misunderstood reality.
Now, moving to the second scene, the brief calls for a micro-narrative where someone is visibly bearing the heavy burden of guilt right in the middle of a heated argument. This totally elevates the emotional stakes. It's not just confusion anymore, it's an active, real-time realization of the damage being done. Capturing the precise moment the guilt washes over a person's face during a conflict requires some immense nuance.
The third scene in the brief focuses on something even more volatile, the sheer instability of receiving mixed signals. Specifically, a person alternating between genuine kindness and cold emotional distance. Talk about a psychological pendulum swing. One moment you're getting warmth and connection, and the literal next moment, a cold, detached withdrawal. Just reflect on that destabilizing feeling in your own life for a second. What does experiencing those mixed signals actually do to a person? Well, those wild swings create profound emotional friction. It creates an environment where you literally never know where you stand, which is honestly perhaps the most exhausting form of unhealthy communication of the whole bunch.
Okay, on to Section 3, the technical execution, crafting the invisible.
To actually pull this off and make these invisible emotions visible, the source lays down some dense, rigorous ground rules. It dictates the visual atmosphere, demands absolute realism, specifies precise audio needs, and sets highly restrictive parameters. They are essentially building a completely controlled environment specifically designed to maximize your emotional response.
Notice the intense focus on visual realism here. The brief insists on photorealistic humans, realistic facial expressions, and buttery smooth camera movement. Why go to all that trouble? Because capturing the absolute subtlest micro-expressions, a tiny twitch of the eye, a slight frown, a nervous swallow, is the whole secret to portraying genuine human connection. The camera has to glide smoothly so you aren't distracted by the technical execution. You're just fully absorbed by the humans.
Then we have the atmospheric constraints. By forcing the use of warm cinematic lighting and pristine 4K HDR and pairing it with a strict ban on any on-screen text or watermarks, the creators are forcing us to look at the faces. There's literally nothing to read, no pop-ups to distract your eye. The raw emotion has to carry the entire weight of the story. And we definitely can't ignore the soundscape. The audio specs are wildly specific. It demands emotional background music layered with a French voiceover. But here's the real kicker. It requires realistic lip sync. That adds this profound layer of cinematic realism, basically tricking your brain into accepting the characters as living, breathing people experiencing real pain and confusion.
Let's wrap things up with Section 4, the silent language revealed, bringing it all together.
When you look closely, there's a really clear formula at play in this brief. It's a methodical three-step process. You establish a raw, relatable emotion, you capture it with ultra-realistic precision, and then you evoke a deep, empathetic connection with the viewer. And the crazy part? You do all of that without relying on a single word of written text.
Ultimately, this brief is essentially a masterclass. It's an incredible guide for generating a professional, high-end visual narrative about the invisible barriers of human connection. It really proves that the absolute most powerful communication often happens when nobody is speaking at all.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a fascinating little thought experiment. If someone were filming you in 4K HDR right now, with a smooth camera capturing your every single micro-expression, what silent language would you be speaking to the world? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep your eyes open to the silent language happening all around you today.